Hey everyone, time for another rapid game against a player this time of a 900 elo. So in the series I'm running you through how to play against players of different rating levels, what it takes to win at each level. So we've got a Caro-Kann, I've got the white pieces, and the way that I like to play against the Caro-Kann is with the advanced variation. What this tends to do is it will cramp black for space. On the king side in particular, it can be quite hard for black to develop his king side pieces. Now there's a few different ways that black can play this. One of the main ways is with bishop to f5. The other main way is with c5 straight away. Bishop to f5 has the advantage over the French defense of getting the light squared bishop out from the pawn chain before playing e6. In the French defense, just by comparison, black instead plays e6, and then after d4 and then d5, the light squared bishop can often be a problem piece for black. So the Caro-Kann tries to get the bishop out before playing e6, but black also might do something else. We don't know. Those are the two main moves anyway, bishop to f5 and c5. Now my opponent is already having a think here, trying to consider what he wants to do. So we get the immediate c5. Okay, so now I play knight to f3, and again, if we think about the main moves here, there are three options for black. I know this through prior study. Knight to c6 is one of those moves. Now at this point, I will take on c5. You may have noticed before, if we go back a couple of moves, that this pawn is actually not defended. So you can take it straight away, but I prefer to play knight to f3 first, developing a piece, and only after knight to c6 do I capture here. Now if black goes ahead and plays e6, then I can defend this pawn with bishop to e3. You try and hold on to this pawn for as long as you can. This is one of the ideas of the opening that I'm playing here. Okay, but we get the move bishop to g4. Now the move that I'm going to play here has, well, it doesn't look like much, but it has a bit of a trap behind it. It's the move c3. Now the trap is that many players with black will capture this pawn because it looks as though black can win it. But with c3, the little trick here is that it opens the diagonal for the queen to come to a4. c3 also has the point of playing b4. But I've seen many players fall into this trap where they'll take on e5. So let's see if my opponent does just that. Now in fact, he doesn't fall for the trap. He takes on f3 first. So this means that I'll take back with the queen, and then he's going to take on e5. So well done to my opponent for knowing the opening theory, or at least that's what I'm thinking he has shown here. Now the move e6 is a bit unusual. I'm trying to work out why that might be. So he's threatening to recapture the pawn. That's one point. And now I suppose he can take here. But I'm going to go ahead and reinforce this pawn via b4, supporting the pawn on c5. Remember, this is one of the other points of playing c3. Now with the pawn on c3, I can play b4, and this pawn is securely guarded now. He can take this pawn on e5, it's true, but that's fine. I was prepared for that because, of course, I had won the pawn and I'm just giving back the material. So we're back to equal, and with this check, the black knight is going to need to go back either to c6 or to d7. So let's see which square black chooses. So the idea here is that I've got a queenside majority now, with 4 pawns on the queenside versus 2 of black's pawns on that side of the board. Black, on the other hand, has a central majority with 2 pawns in the centre. And this is the imbalance that we've got, so it makes for an exciting game, right? We've got an imbalanced pawn structure, and I think the move here is to simply castle. And as I mentioned before, black's problem often in the Caro-Kann is that he struggles to develop his kingside pieces, and we can see this playing out already. The pawn that was on e5 makes it hard in one of the variations, but now that that pawn is gone, it's still kind of hard and it's still kind of awkward for black to get his forces out. Like, you want to play the knight and the bishop out, but they can get in each other's way. I mean, here maybe it's okay, but if he plays knight to f6, then I've always got the possibility of pinning it via bishop to g5. This knight is already pinned, so I can always consider taking that one off at any moment. And it just feels as though I've got a bit more king safety. Well, certainly I've got a lot more king safety, actually. His king's in the centre, and this is black's problem. He needs at least 3 moves in order to castle. He needs to be able to play his bishop to e7, his knight to f6, and then castle. So I've got a little bit of time to cause some problems, potentially, in the meantime. One possible idea is rook to e1. Now that's a move which develops a piece with a threat, which is always good practice. It would have the threat of, well, in the previous position, it would have had the threat of taking on d5, where the pawn wouldn't be able to take back. But now that he's put the knight on f6, then rook e1, followed by queen takes d5, could be met by capturing with the knight. So this idea no longer works quite as well as it would have done. But I'm going to go ahead and pin this knight. Probably bishop to e7 would come next, I think. And we've got an equal-ish game, you know. Dynamic, certainly, but still. Now this move, though, from black I don't like, because I can capture this pawn en passant. He'll have to take back with the queen, and I believe that he's going to find himself in some trouble. Let's just calculate this. So capturing en passant, he can't take with the knight because the knight will be pinned. So capturing en passant, he'll have to take with the queen. And in this case, I'll be able to grab the knight. He still won't be able to take back with his knight. And I will be able to capture with the queen, actually. So let's just look at this line one more time. Pawn takes, queen takes. If not queen takes, then just won a pawn for nothing. Followed by bishop takes. After pawn takes, I've got queen takes. And his knight can't take the queen because it's still pinned. So let's go for this. Always very important in chess to calculate. And maybe even here, just before I play that line out, I might do a double check to see if there's anything even better. Because there may well be. I mean, who knows? Maybe there'll be a possibility to ramp up the pressure somehow here. The queen's going to end up on b6. And my first idea is to take this knight. Now, the only thing that's wrong with my position after winning that pawn is that this knight will be undeveloped. So I just have to be careful that there's no tactics in that exact position. It's also possible to take here, but in this case he takes back with the knight, so that's no good. There's also this pressure along this diagonal towards the black rook, which is hanging on a8. It's a good tip in chess is to just check which pieces are undefended. So there could be some possibility, perhaps, of deflecting this pawn and then grabbing this rook. Could I even do this straight away? Something like c4. Although in that case I'd need to worry about queen takes b4, so I'm not so sure about that. No, I think I want to keep this structure intact just to prevent a capture on b4. But this capture here looks very good. Now I'd be giving up the bishop, but the bishop is kind of not doing anything if it can't threaten to take the knight. Remember, black has already given up his own light squared bishop, so it's not as though I'm giving black the bishop pair or anything. Instead, I'm actually just winning a pawn here. Just have to worry about this rook in the corner, but I'm aware of that, and I think I'll be okay as long as I'm careful. Probably knight to d2 will come at some point. But yeah, capturing here is my idea, and then he's probably going to have to play rook over to this square. Now, he will have a rook on an open file, but hey, a pawn is a pawn, right? Can't take the queen because of the pin. Let's just remember that. So rook to g8, I think, is probably going to come, and that's going to give me time to develop the knight. And being a pawn up, I should look to carry on the momentum. Just one thing too about this, once he plays rook to g8, I've just noticed that I can then look to take the knight. I didn't actually see that before. I didn't actually see that before entering into that line. So it is interesting that sometimes you can play moves as you're going. You don't have to calculate absolutely everything. You just have to make sure that you're not blundering anything. It's of course one of the keys to improving at chess. Now, if you're looking to improve your chess, speaking of that, I help ambitious adults reach their goals in the game. This is one of the things that I do. I've got a few students I'm working with right now, and if you'd like to join them and you enjoy the way that I explain things, the way that I see the game, then go ahead and click the link in the description below. It's the pinned comment or the first line of the description. We can set up a time to chat and help you reach some of your goals in chess. So do check that out if you have interest. So black's thinking here. He's got to consider this rook on h8. He might be thinking of a way to try and free his knight so that he can take my queen, but there's just no way that he can do that. The thing is, this pin is very strong. Like all the way back when I was faced with a6, it was important not to release this pin, right? Like you could, I think, move the bishop away, maybe with a move like bishop to d3, all this way back. But I wanted to keep the pin, which is why in this position, on move 10, I moved it back to a4, keeping this annoying pin against the knight. And this is often black's problem, as I said, being slow to castle. His king stays on this square for a long way into the game, and it's now not at all clear how black should continue. The problem is rook to g8, which is the most natural way of saving the rook, maybe the only way of saving the rook actually, is met by bishop takes d7. So at this point I'm prepared to release the pin because the king's got to take back, and then I can give this check. And I think he'll have to block with the bishop in that case so as to connect the two rooks. But then I'm 2 pawns up, and his king will never be able to castle because it's going to be on d7. So let's go for this line. Forcing moves. Always look at the forcing moves in every position. One of the real tips to improving at chess. And he has to take with the king, and then I get this check. He'll block with the bishop. I will have the possibility of taking this pawn, but I am 2 pawns up, and I don't need to be greedy actually. I just want to finish my development, because having grabbed this material and caused black some king safety trouble, there has been some cost to that. It hasn't just been winning those 2 pawns with nothing in return for black. Like, I have fallen a little bit behind in development. Like after he plays bishop to e7, I will have to, I think, fix my development issues. So I think a lot of players after bishop to e7 would take this extra pawn, but in that case my knight is still on b1, undeveloped, and also taking here would really be opening up the files for the benefit of the black rooks. Like you can imagine taking here, and then after rook to h8, then the queen retreats, I guess, but then the other rook comes here, and then black would have 2 rooks staring down at my king, and I don't really like that. I can deal with one of these files being open, but I don't really want to open the other one. So sometimes winning material isn't always to your advantage. So let's continue with this. Let's go with bringing the knight out. I can picture maybe rook to f8 is possible, but I've always got this escape square. It's one thing that I made sure to calculate before bringing the knight out. Again, look at the forcing moves not only for yourself, like I had here. This was the forcing move, which allowed me to win the pawn, but you also, in every position, need to also be aware of the forcing moves of your opponent. So something like rook to f8 is definitely on the cards, because black, being 2 pawns down, will understand that he needs to try and generate some sort of an attack here. And, well, also he would love to trap my queen. That's another thing that black would like to try to do. Now, where is this knight going? This is an interesting question. I'd like to bring it maybe to c5. So knight to b3 followed by knight to c5 is one possibility. That would be a check. The bishop wouldn't be able to take it at this moment because the queen pins. I expect this queen's not going to be able to stay where it is, but still. This is one possible route for the knight. Knight to b3 in here. And my opponent has gone passive with his rook. He's defending this pawn, which is, I think, certainly the wrong way to go. It's understandable that he wants to save material, but already being 2 pawns down, the only way that black is going to be able to get into this game realistically is by going for compensation, not trying to hold on to material. As I said before, taking that pawn was not really on my mind. Instead, I was just thinking about finishing development. So defending passively, it gives me time to bring this knight into b3, and now if he does play something like rook to f8, I'll be able to enter in with a check. Now, it's important to look at the critical line, though, because just as I say that, I'm thinking to myself, well, if rook to f8, and if I played the knight here with check, it's true that the bishop can't take, but maybe the queen could take, actually. That's quite interesting. So actually, we're going to get this line. Let's see. Can I actually play this move? Let's calculate it. Because what is correct or incorrect in chess often does come down to calculation. So, knight to c5. Bishop takes c5 isn't possible, but queen takes c5, interestingly, might be possible. The issue is that if I took the queen, then he could take my queen, and I would be a piece down. We'll still have the extra 2 pawns, but I think what I can perhaps do, if I just create a theory here, which I'll test in a second, we'll go, in case of queen takes c5, I'd be able to actually take the rook. So we'd be entering into a critical line in this case. So then he takes my queen, I would take his queen, and in that case I would be up in exchange. Always worth double checking though, so let's do that. Knight to c5 check. If queen takes, then queen takes rook. If the queen escapes, like if it runs away from the threat from the pawn, for example here, then I can take the other rook. So I think rook takes back is most likely. Let's just follow that again. Knight to c5 check, queen takes, and rook takes queen, then I've got pawn takes queen. So I've done my double check. I'm confident with this. And I think this should lead me to a very good position. But it's important to look at these lines, right? Like, many people would play this check without thinking. But you have to look at all of the forcing moves. Maybe this is a bit of a theme of this video. Yeah, because forcing moves need to be looked at. Even something like queen takes, which doesn't look possible at first, but then when you realize that the white queen itself is under attack, well, then you've got to look a second time, don't you? Okay, so he didn't actually go for this line, but I'm still very glad that I took the time to calculate it. But I think now everything is just falling apart for black. It's going to start with queen takes e6, And then king to c7 is forced. Then I'm going to be able to take the bishop. Yeah, pretty bad news here for my opponent. But you know, I think that move b5, that was the real start of Black's major problems. I mean, a review of the game with the help of the engine will confirm that. But that's my feeling, that he just didn't see all of the problems with what had happened. I mean, there's a few ways to win here. Taking the bishop is obviously very attractive. Another thing that I could do is take the queen, and then after the king goes there, give this fork. That would win the exchange. But just winning a piece outright has to be stronger. Now, where's the king going to go? If it goes here, then there'll be the fork with the knight. If it goes here, then there'll actually be checkmate. And if it goes here, then there can be another check. And I could also look to trade queens at some point. Okay, he's found the best move, you know. In positions like this where you're up a lot of material, it can be a good idea to trade queens, because that reduces any threat of counterplay. But also, when the enemy king is so exposed, you should be looking for a finish. And with this move, queen to d7, he's going to be forced over here. Is there a way to actually finish the game in this situation? I mean, I've always got this one on tap, in which case I'd trade the queens and just have an extra knight. But something tells me that I want to go for more here. We'll give this check. He'll have to go here, and then I can take this pawn with a threat. The threat will be to renew the possibility of bringing the knight over here. So this is my idea, and this is the threat. There's also some ideas of giving a check here, but this is the big check that my opponent needs to watch out for. And if you're enjoying the video so far, by the way, do go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm doing an entire series where I'm playing different rated opponents from 100, 200, 300, all the way up to 2000, and showing you how you can win at every level. So by subscribing to the channel, you won't miss out on any of the future videos in that series, plus a number of others that I've got in the pipeline. Now, it's quite hard for him to stop this, this knight d7 idea. One way that he could look to do it is by bringing the rook here, but even in that case, I can still do it, and then he'll be forced to give up the rook. Yeah, this is the problem, I think. There's also this check. Just look for the most forcing way forward here, but this looks pretty good. So after giving up the rook, I can capture back, and then I'll be a clean rook up with a better position. And at that point, you know, maybe I will look to trade queens, because two rooks are better than one, as they say. Famous chess expression, that one. If he moves the king out of the way, which is also possible, I guess, he would just end up losing the queen. Yeah, I was just looking at this, like, what if he'd moved the king over here? In that case, I could actually take the queen with check. And the same would be true if he went here. And if he did go there, then I could take the queen, and the knight would actually defend my queen. So in the case of this, the knight would take back. I'm just looking to see if this move here might actually be stronger. Sorry, in the live position, this move here, perhaps, because then I could take this rook instead of this one. Is that better? It might be, it might not be, but sometimes when you see a simple move, it's best just to go for that. And if I was to take a safety first approach here, trading queens would definitely be the way to go. Then just win with the extra rook. But instead my opponent resigns, and understandably so. Now that you've seen what it takes to beat a 900 ELO opponent, click here to check out the next video in the series. In this series, I'm taking on opponents at every rating level from 0 all the way up to 2000 and showing you how you can win at every level.